Hi everyone, welcome if you're new here and welcome back if you are a returner. One of the biggest things that people always have concerns about when it comes to being organized and productive, particularly at work, is email. Email is its own beast that deserves its own special attention. So over the next couple of videos, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to have a series where we're going to talk about dealing with email. I'm going to focus on two different clients. One's going to be Outlook and the other is going to be Gmail. I use Gmail mostly for my personal email, and I know a lot of people use Gmail, and I use Outlook at work. To get started though, I figured we would talk about just email tips in general for how to manage email, regardless of which client that you're using. The first tip is notifications. So unless you are in some type of field where you are timed for your responses to emails, maybe like customer service or something, it's really unnecessary for you to be alerted the instant that you get an email. So any chimes, any pop-ups, turn all of that off. That's an instant distractor from whatever it is that you were doing before you saw that thing. So turn off notifications. Depending on how many emails you get, make sure that you're reviewing your emails pretty regularly. For personal emails, for me, that means once a day is enough, usually in the morning. For work emails, it's usually 2, maybe 3 times a day. It's also somewhat seasonal. Sometimes I'm expecting a lot more emails, particularly around certain times of the year. One way to figure out how often you should be checking email is really check as infrequently as you can while still staying on top of your emails. So I can check my Gmail once a day and still stay on top of my emails. For my work email, for most cases, if I only checked it once a day, I would very quickly get behind. So maybe take 30 minutes or so to process your emails, see how many you're able to get through in that time period. And if you're able to get through all of them, you could probably only get away with reviewing your email once or twice a day. But if after 30 minutes, you still have 25 emails, you probably want to just check your email a little bit more frequently. So try out what works best for you. Something between living in your email and checking it all the time every second and never checking your email. There's a whole range of opportunities in there. Tip number 3 is to treat your email like any other item you have to do. It is, as been said, a to-do list that other people can write on. So when you get an email from someone, you get to decide what you do with that. Maybe it's an email notifying you that some store is having a sale, or it's an email reminding you about the agenda for a meeting that you have coming up, or it's an email that's asking you to look up something or do a particular task. That is now something that you're putting on your to-do list, and you get to decide what you do with that. My recommendation is, when you read an email, decide, what do I need to do with this? Do I need to do some kind of task? Do I need to follow up? Do I need to just file this? What is this email asking me to do? And imagine that that was a thing on my to-do list, that on my to-do list, I look down and I see, look at coupon book. Then I get to decide, oh, this is not something super important, I'll do this later. Or yeah, I want to do this by a specific time or specific day. Other people don't necessarily get to decide your timeline, although you can certainly take that into consideration depending on the urgency and relationships, etc., etc. But you treat it like any other thing that you have on your to-do list. That's also why it's important to not live in your email all the time, because for any other task that you have to do, you're not only focusing on that one task and that's all you're doing all day long, you have other things that you're doing. So you might check your email a couple of times a day, and that means a couple of times today, you go back to the task of checking your email. You also want to try to have as few of these to-do list emails as possible. I have one personal email address and one work email address. That's it. Some people have multiple email addresses. They have an email address for, their promotions that they sign up for. They have another email address that's just for communicating with business things. There's actually different ways for you to use one email address to have one inbox, particularly in Gmail. And so if that's something that you're curious about, you're going to want to make sure you watch the Gmail video where I talk about how you can use different email addresses but still have them all go to one email account. Set expectations when it comes to your emails. So if I email you and you get back to me within 2 hours, I'm pretty much decided that you are going to get back to me via email within a day or so, within 24 hours. If you do that consistently, you have set that expectation. Set expectations with your email, with people that you're communicating with, especially for work. When you're emailing people back and forth, after a while, you start to have a relationship with them. You know the people at your job where you email them and 2 weeks later, they email you back. You know who these people are. You also know the people who, when you email them, 5 minutes later, they've emailed you back. You know who those people are. So set the expectation of who you are when it comes to email responsiveness. You don't want to be on either extreme. You don't necessarily want to be the person that responds back within 5 minutes, and you also don't necessarily want to be the person that responds back in 2 weeks. Think about what you're communicating to people when you're doing that. The person that is responding back within 5 minutes is communicating to someone, whether they want to or not, I don't have a ton to do besides check email. And the person that takes 2 weeks to respond back is communicating, whether they want to or not, either A, your email is really not that important to me, or B, I am super, super busy and I can't do everything that I need to do. So think about the last time that you sent an email to someone and the response time for them to get back to you. Was it 5 minutes? Was it a day? Was it 4 days? And think about whether you internalize for yourself, oh gosh, this person is very responsive to email, or this person's not very responsive to email. There's kind of a range there. You could have someone get back to you for an email in a day and you would say they're very responsive via email. You could have someone get back to you in 6 hours and you would say they're very responsive to email. So use that to your advantage and take your time responding to email. It is okay if you get an email on Monday at 1:30 p.m. and you don't respond to it until Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. That is okay. Email by definition, if someone is sending you electronic mail, it's not urgent, it's not time sensitive. Sometimes you get time sensitive emails, but for the most part, it's stuff that can wait. So understand that as you interact with email with people, you are setting an expectation of how they can assume you will communicate with them in the future, either a quick responder or not a quick responder. If you are normally a quick responder, I want you to try next time you get an email, wait 1 hour before you send it and see if there's a difference between waiting 5 minutes to respond and waiting an hour. I'll give you a hint. There's not going to be a difference. Now, I know for some of you who are fast responders, you might be thinking, oh, but I send it because I don't want to forget. Later in this series, we're going to talk about how you can maybe address that issue by sending your email later, and you can schedule it to go out when you want to. So make sure that you're subscribed, and that way you don't miss when I post those videos. Try to keep your emails somewhat brief. Anything between 5 to 7 sentences or so is probably the maximum you want to have in an email, depending on the messaging that you're sending. If it's too long, frankly, it's probably not going to get read, and an unread email is worthless. You want to make sure you get to the point as quickly as possible, definitely in the subject line, saying something like time sensitive, for your review, response requested, due Tuesday, something that gets their attention before they even open the email. That's your way of communicating that to them. Then within the first sentence to 3 sentences, you want to kind of get to the point. What do you want? Sometimes people will get really long-winded and they'll have these grand openings. Oh, how's your dog? Oh, it was so great to see you on Tuesday. We really should get back together for coffee. And there's time for that, but you don't want that to get buried in your message that you're trying to send. So you want to make sure that you're being very clear about what you want, so that way people know what's expected. And you want to try to be brief. because if it's too long, people are not going to read it. It doesn't matter if you bold stuff, if you've underlined it, if it's too long, it is not going to be read. Try to be strategic in using paragraphs to make things stand out as well. Headings, maybe arrows, things like that as needed. You don't want it to be too complex. I'll provide a couple of examples, that way you can see what I'm talking about, of what a maybe complicated or complex email would look like. It's got a little bit too many words, a little bit long-winded, versus a more simple version. Brevity is a very, very difficult skill, particularly in email. I say it takes me longer to write a short email than it does to write a long email, particularly if it's a very pointed email that I want to get information across. When you do send your emails, you want to format it in a way that information is grouped together. So if I'm asking someone to schedule a meeting with me, for example, I'm going to ask them in the opening to schedule the meeting, and I'm going to group together all of the times that I'm available. So visually they can see the break when I start to essentially shift gears into another topic. And finally, make sure you proofread your emails. This should go without saying, but even I'm guilty of it sometimes. When I'm writing an email, I'll review it and then I'll add in sentences. And I have sent emails before where I did not finish a sentence because I went back to proofread it and I thought, oh yeah, I should add this, and I just never finished that thought. So make sure you proofread it, but proofread it kind of carefully and try not to be in a rush when you're sending things. Let me know if you have any other specific comments or questions about sending emails, using email. Over the next couple of videos, we're going to talk about Outlook and Gmail and how specifically you can use some of the tools in those programs to achieve these things specifically. So make sure that you are subscribed and you hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss when I post those videos. Hopefully this was helpful for you. If so, go ahead and hit the like button. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.